Welcome to the Locker Room on this Thursday, June 1st. I'm Alan Locher. Happy June and happy Pride to all. We are kicking off Pride Month celebrating with three LGBTQ plus business owners of Anchor2Anchor, Christopher Street Tours, and PrideFit. The LGBTQ plus community has been under attack across the nation, with conservative lawmakers advancing and passing bills that take direct aim at LGBTQ plus individuals and their freedom of expression. This pride is more important than ever, and we all need to be louder and prouder this month. Stephen Hooper, Michael Venturiello, and Sam Leicht will join me to tell the world why pride and representation matter in 2023 when these lawmakers are spinning their wheels trying to silence us. My first guest, Stephen Hooper, worked in the fashion business in New York for 26 years as a designer for the likes of Donna Karan, Banana Republic, and Armani Exchange. He was burnt out and moved to Provincetown. He met his husband there on the Cape in 2002, moving up there in 2015, and bought a guest house and spa for a different life. After a few years, and when COVID hit, Stephen realized that he missed being creative. He took some classes and he decided to do a small line and open a small store on Commercial Street in Provincetown, the store where we actually met last summer. Stephen recently opened a second location in Mashpee Commons where he added a women's line. Please help me welcome the owner of Anchor2Anchor, Stephen Hooper, to the Locker Room. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, how are you doing, Alan?
I'm well. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
You know, last summer I had mentioned my show when we spoke, and I was, just so intrigued at, what you had done during the pandemic, the pandemic inspired me to start the show. So I love how it sort of inspired you to open Anchor2Anchor.
Yeah, I mean, basically, me and my husband, we moved from New York in 2015. We bought this guest house and things were going great. And I did this printmaking class at PAM, the Provincetown Art Association Museum. And it just kind of re-engaged my passion for design again. And when COVID hit, we obviously had to close down the guest house for, good 3 months, I think. And I just started, I have a studio that we built in our back garden. I just started designing again. And, I said to my husband, I think I want to open a store. So actually I make candles as well as design clothes. And originally I was just going to actually do a candle store, and some guys they beat me to it by a month. They opened this candle store, and I was like, so I do still do candles, but I added some clothing as well. So it started small. It's a mixture of, when I first started, it was sweatshirts, t-shirts, and candles. And I love graphic, bold design and colors. And I just did these kind of like funky sweatshirts. And what's been great is they've resonated with so many people in the community. Originally I thought it was going to be predominantly gay men, but the lesbians love it as well, which is great. And then, I get a great amount of straight people that come in and love it too. So it's being in P-Town opening retail, I think, is a very unique place to do that, and quite a special place. So I thought, if I couldn't have fun and do something a bit more bold there, where can you do it, So that's kind of how
I love that. Well, I remember liking the apparel, and I definitely remember smelling the candles. I may have even bought the candles. I have to check, because my husband is a big candle person himself, and I remember loving them. So talk about, for yourself, what does pride and representation mean to you today in 2023 when what is happening around the country is going on?
Well, I think it's obviously more important than ever that we have a voice, continue to have a voice, and continue to stand up for our rights. I mean, living in, I guess, my journey through gay life, I knew very young that I was gay. I did struggle with it because there was no
representation, just like
there was no mentor at that time, because I'm 59, turn 60
I'm
next year.
56. The same for me.
So it was difficult, but I went to art school when I was 18, and for the first time, I realized there was other people like me. So I lived this pretty gay life from a pretty young age within the confines of my fellows, but I didn't actually come out to my parents until I was actually probably in my 30s. It took me quite a while and that was more to do with feeling like I was going to lose their love. I was just scared of that more than anything else. But they knew, but we never had that conversation, where I think dialogue now is much easier with younger people. But yeah, my entire career, so art school, then being in the fashion business, then working in, I lived in Amsterdam for a little bit, then moved to New York. So I've always been surrounded by gay people, and it's always been easy to be out and about and gay. And then moving to Provincetown, it's just like, it's kind of like I live in this weird bubble. My gay existence has been quite bubble-like, I guess. I haven't had to really, after I accepted that I was gay, I haven't really had to struggle with anything. But we're just going backwards right now, and it's kind of freaking scary.
It really is, and it's so interesting because, I was very lucky. My mother asked, if I was straight when I was probably about 21, but it took me, just like yourself, till I was about 30 to tell some straight friends for fear of losing their love and friendship. And I really, what you said about representation for us, you're 59, I'm 56. There was nothing on television that really, people have, I don't know for you, but, I guess you said art school. And so meeting fellow, people have asked, when did I know I was gay? I don't have a moment because, it wasn't talked about. So like, how do you have a moment to know something that isn't in existence? Talk about finding Provincetown. You went, met your husband there in 2002, correct?
Correct. So basically, it was when I was working at Money Exchange. I was working with a group of guys that two of them had grown up in Boston, and they kept talking about Provincetown. And a group of us went for a long weekend. And it was like this, 2 times in my life have I had this happen. One was Amsterdam, and second was P-Town. The first time I arrived in P-Town, and we're staying at this guest house on Bradford Street. It was kind of raised up a little bit, so the view from it was the whole of P-Town, the harbour, all the boats, and it was sunset, and it was just the most breathtaking kind of like wow. And I just had this instant love of it. I had been going to Fire Island previously, but I loved in P-Town where there was more restaurants, there was, more clubs and bars, there was shopping, there was just more to do. And it was just visually stunning. So that was in 2001, I think, the first time I went. Oh, no, 2000. And then the following year, I ended up, I was lucky, I had a pretty good job, and I was able to buy a small condo. So I bought a vacation place. And the first summer, I actually met my husband, Paul. And he, was living in New York as well. So we ended up dating, and, and then we finally got married in 2005 when it became legal.
Amazing. I am very jealous because both of my parents are Dutch and born and raised in Amsterdam. I was engaged in Amsterdam, but I have never lived there. And that had to be magical as well.
Oh, yeah. It was it was too much fun, actually, at the time. I was young. It was, the people are just so wonderful. Again, a visually stunning, beautiful place. And it was just the beginning of, it was a very important part of my development of my sexuality as well, I think, actually, at that time. So it was a lot of fun.
I love that. As I mentioned in the intro, you were in the fashion business for 26 years. What drove you into the fashion business?
I've always been creative. I think my love of design started when I was quite young, about 5 or 6. My dad took us to an exhibition, King Tut exhibition at the British Museum, and I became fascinated by all things Egyptian and then Art Deco. And also I'm dyslexic, so actually my writing and reading was not good, still really isn't good. And I was just good with my hands. I did technical drawing, I did woodwork, I did pottery, and my dad was very, very supportive of my creativity. And when I told him I wanted to go to art school, he was fine with it. And so, I did a general foundation course at Eastbourne College, and you did kind of like graphic design, pottery, textiles, fashion, fine art. And it was funny at the time, even though I knew I was gay, I picked textiles over fashion to start with, because I just said to myself, well, people won't think I'm gay if I do textiles versus fashion. So that was kind of like a weird insecurity I had back at the beginning of my journey. And it just kind of started from there. So I actually have a degree in fashion textiles and I have a master's in knitwear design. And when I first went to New York, I was fortunate enough to meet Donna Karan. The third day I was there, she interviewed me and I got the job as an assistant sweater designer. And that's how it all started. Yeah. My life has been very much about good timing and being in the right place at the time,
And I think that is a lot of life, really. It certainly is. You and I met in your store. Do you have a proudest fashion moment?
Ooh. Proudest fashion moment. I mean, working at Donna, you would see big celebs come up. So, like Barbra Streisand, Liza Minnelli, all those kind of peeps. So, that was kind of fun. I've designed stuff that Hillary Clinton once wore, a sweater I designed for Donna that was she was wearing it on the cover of Time magazine. So that was kind of a cool thing. But, just generally, life has been amazing. I mean, I just experienced so many great things and worked with so many great creative people throughout this industry. But, New York City, life can be tough. And at the end, I was just kind of burnt out and wanted a change. And, that kind of step of leaving, I never thought I would ever leave New York City. But me and my husband had just bought a house up in P-Town. We increasingly had a lifestyle where we worked really hard to leave the city every weekend. And, actually my division where I worked was closed down in 2015. And that was kind of like the kick in the ass that I needed to just kind of like say, let's do something different. And that's when we ended up deciding to, buy this guest house in P-Town, move up there. And we did that for 7 years. And the hospitality business was amazing. We learned so many things. And it was, to me, I've traveled a lot around the world through work. And P-Town has gone through a lot of changes, actually, the last 10 years. I found that a lot of guest houses that I knew of didn't offer necessarily the kind of expectation I had of somewhere if I was going to go. So we bought this, 18-room guest house, and we did a lot of renovations. And we kind of, when I approached it, it was like I knew kind of the service I expected, and I knew aesthetically kind of what I wanted. And that's kind of how we kind of started this journey together and built that. And we built we had an amazing spa as well. We were offered a very unique experience to our guests. And then, we were approached last year, and we decided to sell to these people that wanted to buy it. Particularly for me, the store has done really well. This is my 3rd year, and I just wanted to really focus again my energy on being creative and doing this. So that's really what I'm doing.
But your 3rd year, which means you really opened like shortly after the pandemic.
Oh, COVID. Yeah.
Yeah.
I opened in the spring of 2020, which was the first year really where P-Town was open, but it wasn't open. Like, you couldn't eat inside in restaurants still. Everything was kind of outside. With the guest house as well, we had to serve breakfast only outside. We couldn't serve breakfast inside. So there was a lot of restrictions still. And I was just fortunate, and it just resonated with people, and it kind of took off. I mean, I think there was you kind of get this sense of joy. I think when you walk into my store, there's kind of a sense of happiness with the color and the print. And I think people were just yearning and longing for some happiness in their lives after all the freaking misery that we went through. So I think the store smelled good because of the candles. It looked good. And, and I love engaging with people as well. So it's been this really interesting journey as well, because I am part of the story that people like to hear, but I love to hear, especially people's stories. And I am especially intrigued when you get people who particularly live down in the South. Like, I want to know what it's like for them being gay, living in some of these places, because we get perceptions and hear stories from media, but actually hearing it from an individual, sometimes their perception of the way they can tell it can be very different. So what I found intriguing and interesting was so many people that do live in, say, Georgia, if they live in a smaller place, they are out, they're gay, and they have people around them that know, and they accept them, and they just get on with their lives. So, a lot of the noise we hear, or a lot of the stuff we hear, can be media related, and that you've just got to figure out and kind of silence the noise. I think that's my thing that I've really learned from this. But
I love what you said, that you're, because you have a story, I have a story, we all have a story. Right. And I really do think if we just, listened more and shared stories, and that's why I like to do shows like this, to share stories, share our experiences with others. No, please.
Just quickly, I mentioned to you earlier, I'm in Mashpee's a bit more conservative neighborhood.
Yeah, so Mashpee Commons, you opened a second location there.
Yeah. But there is a gay contingent to the area. There are people that are looking for something a little bit different that's not, kind of like the big box retailers. I had this guy from Texas come in last week, straight, Republican, and we just kind of got into this dialogue and conversation about stuff. And I think he had never had someone speak back to him like I did about some of the stuff he was spewing. And I just found it so intriguing that he couldn't really, when I started saying, well, give me an example, tell me what you're talking about, he had nothing that he could really say. And so that's kind of part of my adventure and journey, I think, for this summer. Like, my husband doesn't like me to talk about this kind of stuff at work. He says, stay out of it. But, I'm very open here with people that, my husband works in my second store and all that kind of stuff. And if they like it, great. If they don't, no loss to me. It's like
the whole, it's so interesting too, because I'm Jewish and I'm gay, and it's at a time where I'm being attacked on both sides. But it is so important that people know other people of different faiths and sexual identities, so that we are normalized and everybody just realizes we are all human beings who, basically want to be loved and live our own lives.
Right, exactly.
Before I let you go, Mashpee Commons, you have the second location. My friend Lisa Bell does PR for them. She said she's trying to get influencers into Anchor to Anchor. How would you describe your women's line?
Well, I have a narrative in general for my clothing line. So it's Anchor to Anchor. So my influence is, it's a little bit nautical, it's a little bit hippie, it's a little bit scallywag. So those are my kind of filters that I use when I'm working on it. So that's kind of my narrative. And, it's fun, colorful, and yeah, it's been an exciting journey for me. That is for sure.
Well, I am so glad that we struck up a conversation. I'm so glad you could join me today. Happy Pride to you and your husband. Continued success, Stephen.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alan.
Everybody, you are so welcome. Everybody, please check out Anchor to Anchor, and you can find a link to the website up on YouTube right now. Thank you, Stephen. Thanks to Stephen Hooper for joining me. My next guest, Michael Venturiello, opened the doors to Christopher Street Tours back in June of 2018 while working part-time in student life for New York University. In October of 2021, Michael went to work for Google. And when he was laid off earlier this year, he made the decision to give Christopher Street Tours his full-time attention and tackle it. Michael and I first met at the International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association conference in New York City for World Pride in 2019 and have been friends since. He joined me for my first Pride show back in 2020, and I'm thrilled to welcome him back to the Locker Room today to hear about his future plans for Christopher Street Tours. Please welcome my friend, Michael Venturiello, to the Locker Room. Hey, Michael.
Hi, Alan. How's it going?
Good. How are you? Happy Pride.
I'm good. Happy Pride. It's such a good way to kick it off.
If you're able to turn your phone, it might fill the box.
I know I was having some technical difficulties.
That's okay. But if you need to do it the other way, be my guest. Whatever works best for you.
Okay. I think this is good. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks again. Thank you for being here. It's so exciting that you're taking this incredible step with your company. I wish you all the best with that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really exciting. Today, June 1st, the start of Pride, but also the very first official day of our full-time launch with Christopher Street Tours.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't realize that as well. And the launch of your new website.
That too, new website, new full-time business. There's a lot of good, new, exciting things that are going on right now.
That's a lot going on in one day, huh?
Yeah, it is. But I was just talking to another friend about it. I've been in the works behind the scenes, planning for so long that it's nice to actually now show the rest of the world what I've been working on and have a public website that everyone can access and look at. So it's nice to be able to share with everyone as well too.
Well, that's great. When we talked for the first time, you were here. Talk about the spark that was ignited when you wrote your thesis in 2015 about the impact of the Stonewall riots on college students.
Yeah, so at the time I was studying at the University of Buffalo and getting my master's in higher education administration, which eventually brought me to New York City to work for that job at NYU. But I realized about halfway through my graduate studies that I really just wanted to focus on LGBTQ history and had maybe gone to school for, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I tried to make the best of that situation. And essentially what ended up happening was every project, every paper, I tried to relate it to LGBTQ history or LGBTQ students in some kind of way. And for my graduate thesis program on the history of higher education, I was approved to do a thesis on the history of LGBTQ college students, particularly how the impact of the Stonewall Uprising, or what the impact of the Stonewall Uprising was on college campuses and LGBTQ student organizations on campus. And that was really the spark to learning more about Stonewall and how it impacted not just college campuses and college students, but the country and the world.
That's awesome. Love that. Love that. You know, I was just talking to Stephen about this. For you now, you know, you are a full-time gay business owner. What does representation and being a gay business owner mean to you personally?
Yeah, personally, I mean, it's everything. You know, there's a really great quote. I'm not going to remember it word for word, but basically the effect of like being your true authentic self is the best form of resistance that you could possibly have. And I think for me, that applies as a person, but it also applies as a business owner, an LGBTQ plus business owner, that being myself, being my authentic self out in business, but also just out in life. That representation is so important. It gives other people sort of a portal to say like, well, maybe if they can do it, I could do it too. And it's possible. It's possible to be successful as a queer person. It's possible to live happily and have a lot of queer joy. And unfortunately, I think even in 2023, like some of those things are still debatable depending on where you live and the kind of community that you're in. So to be out and proud as an LGBTQ person and as a business owner, that's what I hope people can see.
Couldn't agree more. It is interesting. And, you know, in some respect, I love the guests I chose for today's show, but, you know, Stephen is based in Provincetown. You're in New York. Sam is in New York. I'm basically in New York. And we do relatively live in a bubble. I mean, there are difficulties. You know, there are people who don't agree with our lifestyle or don't think we should be living our lives out and proud. But there are more rural parts of the country and difficult parts of the country where folks are living, where they truly struggle with the opportunities that we are luckily provided by living in such metropolitan areas, I would say.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, you know, every time I start my tour, we talk about the 1950s and 1953, where there was an executive order signed that basically added sexual perversion to the sodomy laws. And what that did is that it criminalized LGBTQ people and ostracized them legally. And what's interesting about that to me now is I'll be telling the story on tour and realizing that we're having very similar conversations today in 2023. And how that kind of relates is, you know, it's easy to be like, oh, back then, you know, you might have thought that you were the only person, the only queer person in your school or in your place of employment, and then pretend that like, you know, that's all over. But I think the reality is we do live in a bubble in New York City, and other parts of the country or world experience that as well, where there are people still that maybe come to New York City or come on this tour, and that's the first time they're experiencing a community, an LGBTQ plus community, because even still today, they still might feel like they're the only person like them in their small town or place of employment or whatever it might be.
So true. As I mentioned in the intro, you were laid off from Google and you made the decision to tackle this full time. Talk about, you know, making that decision. Did you immediately, you know, think, oh, I'm going to give this a go, or what was your process like?
Yeah, there was a very brief moment where I was, you know, debating, like, do I stay at Google? Should I find another job at Google? Do I go back to higher education, you know, look for jobs at NYU and kind of go back to that original career that I had? And, you know, maybe after a couple of days of that, it became very clear to me very quickly that Christopher Street Tours is what I'm meant to be doing full time. And the decision, although quick, there was certainly a process behind my thoughts in thinking that. And the reality is, for me, I'm 32 years old. I've done a bunch of different jobs, a bunch of different careers, and careers have never been a big part of my life. It's never really been something that I've cared a whole lot about, to be completely honest. It's always just been sort of seen as a job, and I do the job and it's fine, but I don't like love it. You know what I mean? Like I was never like passionate about a career. And it wasn't until thinking about Christopher Street Tours as a career, like something that could exist where maybe I could do this full time. And that idea was so liberating to me. Like that idea of being able to do tours full time, where instead of waking up and getting on a crowded subway and sitting at a desk from 9 to 5, answering emails all day, which might work for some people, but was just not really my style. Instead, I could wake up, go to the village, meet a great group of people from all around the world, sharing this incredible history, walk around a little bit more, maybe make some TikToks for, Christopher Street tours. It's a whole different way of life. Like, it's a whole different lifestyle. And I think that idea of being able to do this full time, once I saw that as a possibility, it really liberated me from everything that I thought I needed previously for stability, for career. Very quickly realized that all of that was an illusion, and I could kind of just live the life I wanted. And that was really the spark that inspired Christopher Street Tours full time.
I love that. And you are in one of the most beautiful locations in New York City. Truly the West Village. I mean, you and I met when I was working for On Location Tours, and one of the most popular locations is in the West Village from Carrie Bradshaw's apartment.
Yes.
So it's a great place. Talk about your mission with Christopher Street Tours.
Yeah, Christopher Street Tours is absolutely a mission-based organization. So our mission is to share stories and uplift voices from those that paved the way before us. And a big part of our mission is access to LGBTQ history, simply because it was certainly not something that I got in my K-12 education, learning about LGBTQ history or even Stonewall. And in my personal opinion, I think representation is truly life-saving. And we talk about representation in media and music and other kinds of platforms, but rarely do I hear about representation in history. And how cool is it for a young person to come on a tour and learn about a historical figure that was so badass? Like, they led the movement, they changed the world, and they can see themselves represented in that person, in that activist, in that story. And maybe they say, well, if that activist could do that 50 years ago, maybe that helps them see the possibility for themselves that they could do that today. So the mission being twofold, of really sharing those stories and uplifting those voices, but also increasing access to LGBTQ history in general, but specifically for youth.
I love that. Speaking of youth and K through 12, talk about your offering to that age grade, that age group.
Yeah, so we encourage all youth, not just LGBTQ youth, because this is an important history for everybody. So all youth can come on a tour completely free. They can join any tour that we have. There's a youth ticket option set up. So if you're under the age of 18, sometimes we get a lot of families on tour. So like if maybe a teenager wants to bring their parents to show them this history, or if parents want to learn more because maybe they don't know as much and they want to share these locations and this history with their children, they can bring them on the tour for free, which for me is just, again, part of that mission of increasing access. That I don't want money to ever be a barrier for a young person to learn about their history and see themselves represented in it.
That is really a spectacular mission, because it is so true. Stephen and I were just talking about it. He and I are in our 50s, mid 50s, and we had no representation when we were kids. So just providing that, or just provide educational services, like you said, to kids of all genders is incredible. You mentioned, the voices. Is there a particular voice that, what's the word, that resonates with you, of, the stories you share?
Yeah, in particular. So I would say it's more a time period as opposed to a specific voice. But when I first came to the city in 2016, I quickly joined ACT UP, which is the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, which was an AIDS advocacy organization and still is, but it was created in 1987. And there's an incredible quote by Vito Russo, who basically talks about, the future generation will know that there was a powerful group of activists that may not be able to experience the world in the same way, but they'll know that we fought for them. Even though we might not even know each other, right? I've never crossed paths with Vito Russo, but at the same time, I acknowledge and recognize and appreciate the work that he did and other activists like him did. So I could quite literally be alive today as a queer person and as a gay man in particular, without the work of ACT UP and their activists and their members. There would still be an HIV epidemic coursing through our community. And that's not to say that the epidemic is over. It still continues in a different kind of form. But in terms of me being here as a younger generation, 30-something-year-old, being able to live my life as a gay man in New York City, those are the voices that I really want to honor on the tour, that they paved the way, knowing that it was very possible that they might not even get to see that brighter future, but that they were doing it for our generation. And I just think that's an incredibly special and generous act of kindness.
Love that. Next month, you are starting a downtown activism tour. Does it involve ACT UP?
It does, actually, yeah. It's a good segue, a good connection. It does, yes. I'm very fortunate to be a part of this amazing incubator walking tour grant program through the Downtown Alliance, where they selected 5 entrepreneurs to create a new walking tour in downtown Manhattan. So hopefully launching in July, I will be creating a new walking tour of downtown with the focus of LGBTQ plus activism. So it'll certainly include some of the big ACT UP protests that you might have read about or seen in documentaries, but certain buildings that they were in or protesting. On Wall Street, they were protesting, so we'll certainly be there. But other things as well, kind of uncovering some of the hidden truths of the community or hidden figures that people might not know about. A couple that come to mind are Emma Lazarus, who wrote The New Colossus, which is the poem on the base of the Statue of Liberty, was a queer woman. So talking about her and kind of how that relates to today as well. But we'll also visit the site of the very first LGBTQ gay rights protest in 1964, which is at the former U.S. Army building about discrimination in the Army. So there's a lot of great history that people, when they think about like gay history in New York City, kind of the obvious, Stonewall, the birthplace of the modern gay rights movement, but there's so much more that happened in so many other neighborhoods. So I'm really excited to be able to explore a whole new neighborhood and a whole new set of stories on this new tour coming in July.
That's awesome. You give tours, like you said, people from all over the world. Talk about some of that. Is there one particular that stands out, or maybe there's something that surprises people the most on your tour?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the thing that I get a lot of comments on my tour is people are always just surprised at how recent this history is, especially in regards to like the oppression of LGBTQ people and how that has continued over time and how we're still fighting for those rights today. I think it's really easy to separate ourselves from history, to be like, oh, that happened so long ago and we've had our rights for so long and we don't really have to worry about that anymore. But the reality is, especially in LGBTQ history, that's just not true. The rights that we have today are relatively recent, like only within the last few decades. There are certain things that have come on the horizon, which are incredible. Like those are great things and we should celebrate those accomplishments. However, it's also important to be mindful of everything else that's going on in the world and how those rights can be so easily threatened. So I think people are surprised by the relevancy of this. Like it's not a dead history, but it's something that we're still living every single day. We're all a part of it.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. Before I let you go, when you were here last, you had mentioned that you were outed before you were ready. So, and also since you were last here, you got married. So thinking back to the Michael who had been outed, could you imagine the life you are now living with Raleigh?
No. No. And it's funny that you asked that, because this weekend is actually my 10-year college reunion, and I was outed in college. It was a little bit later for me. So it's interesting to reflect back on like 10 years since that had happened, and everything that's happened in those 10 years, just from like a personal sense of acceptance and self-acceptance, but also like establishing an LGBTQ specific walking tour company, and then of course meeting my husband and getting married, which I never honestly thought. Like I think there was a time in my life, and I was like young, like still like 25, where like I gave up on love, like I was like, it's over, it's never happening for me. But I think there's also like a deeper, something that's like more deeply seated, I guess, or like it's like a deeper rooted kind of thing. I'll speak for myself, but not all queer people, of, maybe like I don't deserve love, right? Like maybe people in the queer community aren't deserving of this love, and maybe there's something that other folks are saying that kind of is true. And I think a large part of that is because even still in 2023, like we don't see as much representation of like queer love and queer joy and queer stories. And there's always this idea now of like the gay character being killed off, or the gay show being canceled after the first season. And it's like, even when we get those small little glimpses, it's never sustainable and never lasting. And so I think growing up in that era, like the 90s, I didn't think I like deserved love or would ever find it. And then 6 years ago, actually this June, 6 years ago, I met my husband, now husband, and he's just the absolute best. I mean, I know that's not what this show is about, but if I could just give like a quick little shout out, like he is just.
My husband will give him a run for his money, but I get that. I think a lot of what you're saying is the shame we all felt because of the lack of representation. And
yeah,
I hope he's going with you to your reunion.
He is. Yeah, he's joking that he's going to be the first lady, because he will be my plus one. So
that's terrific.
But yeah, he's the best supporter, and I'm just so grateful to have him.
Well, Michael, much success to you with Christopher Street Tours. The link is down below. It's ChristopherStreetTours.com. Happy Pride, my friend. Thank you so much for being here.
Happy Pride. Happy Pride. Thank you.
Joining me now is Sam Leicht, a Midwest boy living in New York City. He is a fitness trainer, Broadway actor, and entrepreneur who is working to make health and wellness accessible to all with his PrideFit business. Please welcome the founding coach and my current coach, the owner of PrideFit, Sam Leicht. Hey, Sam.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Happy Pride to you.
Happy Pride.
Thanks for being here to kick it off.
Yeah, so, I'm excited.
Me too. I love June. I love June in New York, especially. You grew up in Kimberly, Wisconsin, and came out, I believe, roughly 10 years ago. I've heard you say that you weren't very good at hiding that you were gay. Can you describe what you mean and talk about your coming out?
Yeah, I felt, one of my earliest memories is choreographing dance routines to Britney Spears and making my entire extended family come and watch. We would set up the couches so that there was a nice audience. And I had no idea. At that time, my family never said anything about that being weird or feminine or too much, But then when I got into middle school and high school, me being a little bit more feminine was a little bit more of a negative, to my friends and to other people at school. So it I had a really lovely time. I had a great support system, except when we got into the sports, when we got into like some of those certain friend groups in high school.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And was it difficult when you finally made the choice to come out?
Yeah, it was really difficult. You know, in high school, I always felt like I had something to prove, you know, and so when I would go to track practice and there would be guys on the track team who would bully me or make fun of me or whatever, I always felt like I had to work really hard. And that, I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm happy for that kind of work ethic that it instilled in me. But it did make it really scary to come out, just because we didn't have any gay people at our high school. There was one out gay kid. But right when I graduated high school, I made the decision that I should tell my friends and I should tell my family. And I'm so happy that I did. Obviously.
It's incredible. And it's, you know, I'm much older, and knowing that it was still, you know, even that difficult for you, you know, kind of that 10 years ago is hard for me to, you know, fathom, you know, because I know we've come so far, but to hear you make a decision like that coming out of high school, that's the hope I get from it, because that is much earlier than I ever, you know, could have felt entitled to share that news at that age.
Totally. And I hope that it just keeps on getting easier and easier. Obviously, you know, it seems like we're on that track that people are able to be honest earlier. But
yeah, I agree. It's just those who are trying to silence us is the part that that's where it worries me, you know, that kids are going to get frightened again because of the ignorance we're seeing today.
Yeah, I mean, not to jump topics, but it's part of the reason why I believe that PrideFit is so important. Having and claiming spaces for LGBTQIA plus people. I think that I've had so many people who will comment on my posts on social media and say, we need a fitness program just for gay people now. Like, what's wrong with just normal fitness? And obviously, PrideFit being gay focused, it's not because it's like a different kind of workout, right? It's because it's a community of people who lift each other up and are motivating. And it's important just for us to take space and to show people that it's okay. We can live a great normal life and we can support each other.
I'm glad you jumped topics, because it is so true. And it's why I really wanted to do this show. I mean, we need to talk about it. And, you know, even thinking about, like you said, it is a community, PrideFit. You know, I joined it, I think, October of last year. I have not spent much time in the community, and I do love the community aspect, because prior to PrideFit, I was doing CrocFit, which isn't a gay community, but it is an online fitness community. And I love that. And you know, it's just, for me, I haven't had the time to participate as much as I would like in the community aspect. But I think that is, but I also look at the word, because I don't, even though we do use the word pride, I also think pride is proud. And no matter who we are, we all should be proud of who we are.
I completely agree. And you can imagine that when I was creating PrideFit, we had a lot of naming conversations.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about it. Like, what, you know, how did you come up with the name?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different connotations with different queer words, right? Even the word queer is very polarizing. Mm-hmm. So proud, pride, sometimes pride can be seen as a negative, right? If we're too prideful, right? But it really fit when it came to us reclaiming words as a gay community. I think that that's really important for us to continue reclaiming these words so that they're not used against us. And I also just believe, like you were saying, there's so much power in being proud of yourself. We spend so much time shaming ourselves. We spend so much time being unhappy with our body. And my biggest takeaway that I want people to get from PrideFit is that, you know, we should be proud of our body every single step of the way.
Mm.
And aesthetics are always going to be a thing. We're never going to be able to completely forget about us wanting to lose 10 pounds or get bigger biceps, right? But if you can put that on the back burner and focus on sustainable health and focus on being proud of yourself and not shaming yourself throughout that process, those aesthetics will come, right? Those aesthetic goals, they're the cherry on top.
I love that. You reminded me a few years ago, many years ago, one of my best friends painted on a white t-shirt, just so proud, and gave it to a few of us. I loved it. I wore it for years. I loved it. So PrideFit is a program that you created to make fitness accessible for everyone, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, age, or income. How did the pandemic steer you in this direction?
Yeah, so I was doing all in-person personal training and CrossFit coaching before the pandemic. And then in those first 6 months, I was doing all of my own and my partner's training. And I was like, you know what? I have all of this that I've created. I've been writing and I've been testing and I've been just making this cohesive program. I think it's time to see if my community is interested in this type of training. So in October of 2020, we launched PrideFit, and it's been unbelievable, better than I possibly could have imagined. Just because I think that people have, well, I'll say this. Starting from the pandemic, it was actually a really lovely springboard, because for the first time ever, people weren't necessarily concerned about looking a certain way in a swimsuit. You weren't seeing anyone in a swimsuit, right?
Right.
So we were finally able to look at health and fitness and be like, you know, I'm exercising right now because if I don't, and I just sit at my desk for another hour doing work, I'm going to go crazy. And it was one of the first time that people had this understanding that fitness and nutrition should be a part of your life, even if you're busy, even if, you know, you have a full schedule. You need to be able to be making time for this, because it's going to make you happier. It's going to increase your life satisfaction. And that's how PrideFit was born. And we've just been growing ever since.
Really is incredible. You know, there are so many great things that came out of the pandemic. I prefer to work out with somebody in person, but I never really haven't found somebody to do that with. You know, living back in New Jersey, I used to do it in New York. And so finding first CrocFit and now finding PrideFit, it is just, and finding both of those really during the pandemic were really a godsend. Like, I truly love putting out my mats at home, you know, getting my dumbbells. I told you this morning I got up and went for my run as slow as possible.
We love to see it. Good.
But yeah, it's and I really do think finding these programs for people who actually, because there are people who fear the gym, I think the at-home programs and the length of time they are really beneficial. Talk about your goal with PrideFit.
Yeah, I think really quick, I think that that's an amazing point, that we need to have fitness programs that run the gamut. And there are going to be people who will never walk into a gym, and that's fine, right? We need to make sure that they have options that are available to them. And so PrideFit absolutely does that with home programs and home videos. And then I would love to be able to do more in-person fitness classes for PrideFit, because that was where I started. That's how I started to really get interested in fitness, was because of that in-person social community. So that's one of the goals, absolutely, is to continue building this PrideFit community where we can do more in-person meetups. One of the biggest goals that we've had that has been a long time coming, we've been working on it for a year. We're launching an app next month. So that is just, yes, thank you.
That's awesome.
It has been a wild, wild journey. I did not know anything about tech before that, and been learning a lot. But
no, I'm excited. I'm excited for that.
I think you're going to absolutely love it, just because right now it's so hard to have everything in one place. And I find it very, very important that the app that we create has all of your workouts, all of your nutrition, all of your habit tracking, and all of your community just in one app. We're not going to Slack. We're not going, we're not jumping around to True Coach. So that's what we've been working on. And I'm so excited because I have probably like 300 workouts in the bank that I filmed this year that I haven't been able to release yet. And it's just, I'm ready.
Hey, you do them all over the place.
Yeah. Whenever I have a second. Yeah.
I guess like you're visiting friends and you do it in their backyard or.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, yeah. I can't wait to see it. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Talk about your, I know you wish there was a sexier word for it, but sustainable health. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I do wish that there's a sexier word for it. Sustainable health is exactly what I want people to be focused on. But let me try and break that down in a way that is a little bit sexier. One, I want you to do movement that you actually enjoy. That's not really sexy either, but I do think that it resonates with people. So many people have really negative experiences with the gym. And I want to make sure that if that means you're going to do it at home, that's fine because you're more comfortable. If that means that you're going to be doing more cardio than strength training because that's what you enjoy more, that's great. If that means that you're going to be doing more strength training than cardio, that's great. But one is that I want you to enjoy it because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to keep on doing it, right? Two, and this is one of the most important things, is that I want to help you build lean muscle. And this is a little bit more of a complicated topic, but when we focus on building lean muscle, it increases our metabolism. It lowers our risk of chronic disease. It keeps our bones and joints healthy later in life. Our number one priority should not be to get bigger biceps or a bigger butt or to lose weight or to lose fat. Our biggest priority should be to gain lean muscle, everyone across the board. So when I'm looking at sustainable health, I want you to find something that you enjoy, and I want you to figure out how to increase your lean muscle mass. And that would be through resistance training. That's going to be through increasing our protein. It's going to be by making sure that we're eating vegetables and fruit. It's actually really simple. And it is not the sexiest thing to market by any means. But fitness is actually not more complicated than that. And so I'm trying to help people just understand the simplicity of it. And if you can stay consistent, if you can find something that is sustainable, you're going to see results that you want to see.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, I'm 56 now. And so, some of this is becoming a little harder for me, but I also can feel how much stronger I am because I've been doing throughout the entire pandemic, 5 days a week of working out. So it really does build stamina and strength.
Yeah. And I'll add one layer that I think isn't talked about enough, but is pretty mind-blowing to me. I love how the body works. We think about fat loss as doing more cardio or burning more calories, right? The exercise that we do is a very, very small percent of our total calories burned throughout the day. So it's like 5 to 10%, 10% at the very max. But what does influence how many calories we burn throughout the day is our RMR, our resting metabolic rate. And that is determined by one of the factors that determines it is by how much lean muscle mass you have. So that's why I say it's so, so, so important for us to be gaining lean muscle mass. When you have lean muscle mass on your frame, you burn so many more calories. And that is a much better use of your time. It's passively burning calories just by you walking around, living your life, than you trying to spend that time at the gym burning calories. Does that make sense?
It does. How did you, I know, you grew up exceeding at soccer, track and field, and then you have your own relationship with fitness and finding CrossFit. But did you study as well to learn all of what you just were articulating to me?
No, honestly, I went to school for music theater, and over the past 10 years, I've just been taking certification after certification after certification. And I find it so interesting that all I want to do is just keep on learning about it. So yeah, it's been a wild journey.
Are you surprised where you are at today, from the pandemic and now building where PrideFit has landed today?
Oh yeah. I I can't say I wasn't entrepreneurial as a kid. I absolutely was. I would like sell tadpoles on the block and like have so many lemonade stands and whatever. I wanted to like sell hand lotion. I don't know. But I had no idea that I wanted to go into business or learn about business, but I love entrepreneurship and I just love learning, as cliche as that sounds. So I'm very surprised that I made the shift from acting to fitness, but also kind of not, because I love the autonomy of it. I love that whereas in acting, you can be incredible, you can put in so much effort and you still can get the role for so many reasons that you can't control. And with entrepreneurship, when you run your own business, it is pretty much what you put into it, you get back. And I love that. I love being more in control. So surprised, yes, but very happy surprise.
That's awesome. PrideFit is part of the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. How important was that for you to make PrideFit a part of that?
They have been such an amazing community to be able to bounce ideas off of. They have events that I've been going to. And I had no idea just the presence that they had. So honestly, at first, it wasn't that important to me. It was a recommendation where I said, great, let's give it a try. And now that I see just how incredible the people are in that organization, it's been really, really special. I think it'll continue to be super important as we launch the PrideFit app.
Oh, that's awesome. I was looking at it on your website and I may need to ask questions about it later.
Yeah.
But speaking, about representation, what does it mean to you to be an LGBTQ business owner at this particular time, and why representation matters?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are at obviously a very polarizing time where things are being said that are not representative of the country, especially things being said by congresspeople and senators and governors, where they are trying to get attention, but that is not representative of their constituents. And in the media, obviously, we hear about this and it feels very, very negative, and it makes us feel like we're losing a battle. And I think that the first thing that we should do is remember that we are not. When we look at these polls of support for the LGBTQIA community, that has not dwindled, right? We still are continuing to increase when it comes to people believing that LGBTQIA legislation should be passed. But obviously, we need to keep on working on it. We need to keep on making sure that our voices are heard and taking up space, kind of like what we were talking about in the beginning. So just making sure that LGBTQIA businesses exist and that we are proud, and we do it in a way that is representative of the community and makes the community proud. That is very, very important to me.
Beautiful.
I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. You absolutely did. The reason I want to do this, I really, conversations like this, I really do believe can change people's hearts and minds if we just, listen and share our stories. And one of your great stories is that you got engaged this year.
Yes. It's like less than 100 days away that we're getting married. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thinking back to the kid who came out, out of high school, could you imagine that you would be walking down the aisle with Jared shortly?
No, I can honestly say that I think that when I came out, or even before I came out, but I knew that I was gay, I guess my brain just automatically turned off. For a really long time, I said, I'm not getting married to anyone. And it took until I met Jared to say, no, I probably will. So
I have the same story, even though I grew up at a very different time where marriage wasn't even an option. So that thought never, it was really when New York State, and we were still living in New York, tried to tell me that I couldn't get married, that I kind of wanted to get married.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, you have no right to tell me no, basically, was my feeling on the subject. But that's awesome. Congratulations. Thank you so much. What a great way to kick off Pride, Sam. Thank you for being here. And for anybody who wants more information on PrideFit, pridefit.org, correct?
.com.
.com, pridefit.com. It will be up on the YouTube link down below. So make sure to click there to check it out. You have a great June, and I will be working out tomorrow.
Let's do it. Thank you so much for having me, Alan.
You're so welcome. Bye, Sam.
Bye.
I'd like to thank Michael Venturiello, Stephen Hooper, and Sam Leicht for joining me today to celebrate Pride. The links for Anchor2Anchor, Christopher Street Tours, and PrideFit are down below. Please check them out. Join me next Wednesday, June 7th, when Another World's Anna Holbrook joins me live. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do so down below. Turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And don't forget, you can download audio versions of The Locker Room by searching The Locker Room on your favorite streaming platform. Have a great weekend, everybody. As always, please stay safe and happy Pride. Be safe, have fun, and most of all, be proud.